Hi guys, it's Girl Karen, aka cakedbybabyk, and welcome back to my channel. We're doing another tutorial today. The last time I did a tutorial, it was on my 10-minute get out the door, easy makeup for summer. I talked about that routine versus my full glam routine in that video, and I asked if anybody was curious about knowing my full glam makeup routine. One person did ask, so here we are. This is gonna be a fun, long, in-depth tutorial, so let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so I normally start off with my brows first before anything else. However, I did recently laminate and tint my own brows at home. If you guys are curious about those processes, I'm gonna link the dedicated TikToks down below. For my first time, they're not looking too bad. Now, if I didn't have these bad boys done, I would immediately start with a clear brow gel. I love the Rare Beauty brow gel. Actually, let's just put some on for shits and gigs. The lamination on this side didn't take that well anyways. The reason I do a clear brow gel first is so I can laminate the hairs up and see what areas need more of the brow pencil or whatever other brow filling in receptacle you have. Speaking of brow filling receptacles, I'm using the NYX Powder Louder brow pencil today. I've kind of been bopping between different brow pencils as of late, which is honestly very unlike me. I recently just finished the Morphe Nano brow pencil. Absolutely loved that one. I've used the Merit pencil. The Kosas Brow Pop Nano pencil is also another favorite of mine. The possibilities are endless. I personally like a more skinny pencil so I can draw in the hair-like strokes, but you just pick whatever you want to pick, babe. Now, this next step is something that I usually skip if I'm not doing full glam, but because this is a full glam tutorial, we're talking about it, I'm gonna carve out the underside of my brows. And that is when you take a little bit of concealer. I'm using the Lancome Tawny Dole concealer. I'm taking that on a flat edge brush and just kind of cleaning up the underside of the brows. It's a very subtle step, but it just makes everything look a little bit more clean, a little bit more crisp. Doing the same on the other side. All right, now we got our brows done. Cleaning my brush off with a baby wipe. I always keep a pack of baby wipes on my desk to keep things a little bit more clean throughout the makeup process. All right, we are gonna start on the complexion now. I am gonna be operating from an oily girl's standpoint. So some of the products I'm going to be using are more catered towards my skin type. If you're not oily, I'll be throwing out some alternatives. However, if you are, let's start with this primer. This is the Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin Water Powder Serum. If you are oily, this is a freaking godsend. It has this very thin consistency and it packs a punch, which I absolutely love. I feel like a lot of other oil controlling, oil stopping primers are pretty thick in their texture, but this one truly feels like a serum and I am obsessed with it. So I'll apply this in my T-zone because that is where I get the oiliest. I don't apply it too far into my forehead or my cheeks because I'm pretty normal there. If you have dry skin, I would take this time to really go in on your skincare or use a very hydrating primer all over the face. If you have big pores that you want to fill in, this would be the time to use a primer to kind of mitigate that. If you're looking for a hydrating primer, I love this one from Milani. It's the supercharged one. I'm pretty sure it still has this packaging, but if it doesn't, I will put a screenshot of what it actually looks like. I think I'm gonna put some on my cheeks. For some reason, I am feeling a little bit dry here. I am testing out some new skincare and I think that it's the culprit. Making me feel dry in the summer is crazy. Now you don't have to do different primers on different parts of your face. I'm just extra. If you want something that targets more pores, this is my recommendation. This one is also from Rare Beauty. It's their pore diffusing primer. And if you want to use something more bronzy, more glowy, more dewy, this would be the time to put it on. The bronzing drops that you hear everybody and every brand talking about. All right, now moving into the meat of this full glam makeup tutorial. Finally, we're on foundation. Again, I have oily skin, so I am going to be taking a more matte finish foundation. This is the new Benefit Professional. I love this one. I'm in the shade 22 Neutral. Also, forgot to mention, all these products that I'm using and every product that I use in any of my videos is linked down below. That's important information. I'm also mixing the Benefit Professional with the NARS Light Reflecting Foundation. I love this one. Super lightweight. It was actually my wedding day foundation and it will always have a special place in my heart. This is my second bottle and I rarely finish foundation due to the nature of my job. I'm always testing out new stuff, but for me to finish a foundation, that means I really like it. The reason I'm mixing these is because the NARS one is a little bit too light because it is now summer. And plus I really like some of the aspects of the Benefit Professional. It is very life-proof. Probably one of the most life-proof foundations that I have ever tried, and I've tried a lot of foundations. Now let's talk about the reason I chose these foundations. Complexion is so subjective. What works for me might not work for you. For instance, the Benefit Professional. This one is a matte finish. It is an oily girl's dream. However, for my dry peeps, don't think it's gonna work the best for you. So really pay attention to the finish of whatever foundation you're using. If you're more dry, I recommend a dewy finish, something more hydrating, something more luminous. And for the oily skin girlies like myself, matte, demi-matte, natural. Now I'm not saying that's the end all be all cardinal rule of picking a foundation, but it definitely does help when you try and cater to your skin type, especially when it comes to having the makeup look and feel long-lasting on your skin. All right, the next step and one of my favorite tips is setting spray. I'm using the Benefit Professional, and we're doing light layers in between the makeup steps. Also, I'm gonna take this time to color correct underneath my eyes. This is the NYX Pro Fix Stick in the shade Pink. And using a fluffy concealer brush, I'm just gonna tap this out. Again, this is one of those very small, simple steps that you don't necessarily have to take, but it makes, to me, the world of difference. Now, you could use a more full coverage concealer, yes. However, I like to work in very thin layers whenever I do full glam because that helps you look less cakey. Next, doing concealer on the areas where I usually put it. It's usually in the center of the face, and I like to use a concealer that is 2 to 3 shades lighter than my actual skin tone because I like that brightening effect. Once again, light layer of setting spray. I like to wait for everything to marinate and dry down a little bit because you're kind of infusing the concealer with the power of the setting spray. And also, if you let your concealer sit for a little bit, depending on which concealer it is, it's going to have a little bit more coverage because you're giving it time to dry down a little bit more. I'm blending everything out with a beauty blender. You can use a brush. I really don't care as long as you blend it out. It's starting to come together. All right, now it's time to sculpt, bronze, blush, highlight. Now, if you're really oily and you can't tolerate any cream or liquid products, you can skip these steps altogether. However, for me, I found the most long-lasting method is to go in with cream products and then set everything down with the powder counterparts of said products. If you have a more dry skin type, opt for the creams and the liquids. Maybe stay away from powder if you can. Again, for my super oily girlies, you can just go in straight with your powder products. Sometimes when I'm too lazy to layer the cream and the powder, I'll just go straight in with the powder. But we're doing the whole shebang today. I'm using the Rare Beauty Bronzer Stick in Happy Soul. Yes, I know it's a bronzer stick, but this undertone pulls more neutral on me, so I actually use it more for sculpting and contour. And we're gonna blend this out. And again, we're following the pattern of the cream, so I'm gonna use the Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin Blush. This one is in Spiced Latte. Such a good color. I'm so obsessed. And I'm actually gonna add a little bit of blush to the forehead, like the very, very top of it, on the tip of my nose and the excess on the chin. I feel like this makes everything look a little bit more cohesive. All right, we have added all of our cream products. You guys know what's coming next. We're gonna infuse it with some setting spray. I have gone through, I don't even know how many bottles of this. The reason I love it so much is because the finish is just such a happy medium. It's not overly matte where it's drying on the skin, and it's not overly dewy to where it's going to be too hydrating and interfere with the formula of your products that you've already applied. All right, we're looking a little bit too dewy for my liking, so we're gonna go in with powder. This is one of the main things for making your makeup last. If you have a pressed setting powder, great, but loose, in my opinion, is what is really gonna help lock in your face. Should have shown you this before, but I'm using the Milk Pore Eclipse powder, and I like to take a powder puff, and we're gonna press this into the areas that you want to set. Now for me, that is my under eyes, my T-zone, and underneath my bronzer contour. Notice how I'm not dragging it, I'm just lightly patting it into the skin. If you have pores, this technique is going to help with that as well. And I like to do a very small bake, a mini bake, if you will. I like to concentrate it in the areas where I get the most oily. Now, if you're oily, you can skip this baking process, or you can skip the powder altogether because I know it can be very drying for some people. Normal skin girls, I feel like you can do whatever the fuck you want, which is so annoying. Y'all have it easy, but I feel like a lot of people do not have a normal skin type. All right, while the face is baking, I'm gonna go in with the powder counterparts of the cream products that we laid down earlier. I'm gonna do this powder bronzer from Flower Beauty. She is beat up, that bronzer, used and abused. And I'm gonna mix the blushes today. I'm using this Rare Beauty Matte Bouncy Blush. I'm kind of cheating because it's not necessarily a powder, but it does dry down to a powder finish, so I'm counting it. All right, now that the bake has had time to set, we are going to dust off all of this excess. All right, now we're looking a little bit more matte, slightly a little bit more flat, so we're gonna bring some life back into the face with some setting spray. Y'all already know. This kind of helps melt everything together. And always make sure your setting spray dries before you move on to the next step. Now, this is normally where I would do my eyeshadow. I'm gonna do my signature brown smoky eye that gets me a ton of compliments. If you guys are curious, I'm going to link the tutorial that I posted on TikTok in the description. All right, the eyes are done and there's only a few steps left. I am gonna go in with the One Size On Till Dawn setting spray. To lock everything in, you're gonna want a more heavy duty spray. This is not something that I would layer in between my makeup steps, but only to help lock everything in once you're officially done. Once that dries down, we're gonna do some lip liner. I'm using the new Milani Keep It Full Plumping Lip Liner. This stuff is so long lasting. I wore it to an 8-hour Disney day and I did not reapply once and I was eating and drinking like crazy. And for gloss, I'm using the Milani Keep It Full Glossy Plumping Balm. Not particularly long lasting, but I just have been loving how this looks on my lips. And there you have it, my full glam makeup routine. This has been my full glam routine for years now. I love it so much. It never fails me. It's always long lasting and always gets me a ton of compliments. Thank you to the one person who asked for this tutorial. And with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, thumbs up, all that good, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.